Good afternoon. I want to welcome everybody to the January Library Conference Call for the Libraries Connecting Texas program. I'm Mel Van Patten with E-Rate Central. I'm joined by Caroline Wolf, and we also have Henry Stokes from the State Library on the call with us today. A little bit of housekeeping. We are recording today's call. We'll have it available in an archive link that we will send out to you shortly after today's call. So if there's any information that you missed, you'll be able to re-listen to the cast. Want to make sure that everybody on the call can hear me. Caroline, are you able to hear?
Looks like Marisol is having trouble hearing.
You're coming in clear for me. This is Henry. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks, Henry. Okay. So Marisol, I might try dialing in. Just a little bit of housekeeping before I turn it over to Caroline to get started. Like I mentioned, we are recording the call. If you don't have any questions, please mute yourself, or if you're unable to mute yourself and we hear some background noise, I will mute you. So if you have any questions, either use the chat box or feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you. But we want to make sure that we address all of the questions that you have today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Caroline.
Thanks, Mel. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you had a great Christmas season, and it looks like everybody's ready to get down to the filing of the Form 471. But first, I'm going to introduce Henry Stokes from the Texas State Library and Archives. He just wants to say hello to some people.
Thanks, Caroline. I wanted to have a chance to say hi to everybody as we start to begin the application process for the what is actually year 2 of the program, but for some of you, maybe year 1, maybe your first time participants. So I just wanted to say hi and introduce myself in case we haven't connected yet. I'm really excited about going into year 2 of this Libraries Connecting Texas project. We've got, it's an exciting year. We're actually currently, as you may know, in a legislative session. And these funds actually came out of the last legislative session, and we have high hopes that we can continue doing something similar into the future. Obviously, we don't have all the definites yet, but we'll be keeping you up to date. There seems likely that we'll be able to continue offering the subsidy into this second year beyond the first year. So if those of you who are just starting your new year or you're continuing, it may be an opportunity to continue that. I'll have to let you guys know just because a lot of it depends on the funding issues. But as soon as I know, I'll let everybody know what the opportunities are there. And the other thing I wanted to stress, and I think we're going to talk about this soon too, is right now if you did participate in Group 1 and you have a story to share in any way especially about the impact that the higher speeds, if you've got those, or even just the freeing up of funds, or the ease with which you were able to get through this process with the help and the training, please let us know. Let the folks at E-Rate Central know, because these are the kinds of things we need to tell the legislature and report back on for them to sort of show the success of the program, so that we can and as well. I'll be speaking at the Texas Library Association conference in April. I'll have a program about it. We've got a couple folks from Group 1 who are going to be joining me to talk about it, but we'd love to share your specific stories too, in that, just to let the library community in Texas know how successful it's been. So again, just wanted to say hi, and thanks for this time, Caroline.
Thank you, Henry. That's really exciting. I know that for the people in Group 1 who participated last year, having the subsidy again this year is going to be really helpful, and also for the Group 2 people. Just going to give a little update about the Group 1. Group 1, we have a couple of people who still need to file 470s, but those are people who had issues with their EPIC profile, had to move some things over. They were regular libraries in EPIC, but they were really library systems. So now that we have all of their profiles set up, they're going to file their 470s. And we've already started filing 471s. For those of you who are new to the program, The 471 is the actual application for discounts. And so the 471 has to be filed within a certain window of time, and the deadline is March 27th. So we're working diligently to try to get those 471s filed before the deadline. And Mel is working with Group 2. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Mel?
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. I'd love to. We've been blown away by the interest in new libraries to participate in Libraries Connecting Texas. Our thanks to Henry and his team at the Texas State Library for running such a great program for these libraries. So far, brand new libraries in Group 2, we have filed 31 total Forms 470 for 62 libraries. Of those 62, 47 are brand new to the E-rate program. So that's a huge influx in federal funding that had been missed previously. We have one Form 471 filed already for one of these Group 2 libraries, and they've got a great story. This is the city of Presidio, and they were able to, for $6 a month more out of pocket to the library, they are able to do an over 500% increase in their bandwidth from 18 megabits up to 100 megabits and meet the FCC's targeted bandwidth for their library. So I know that the librarian is ecstatic. She can't wait to start the new service. So already some of the good stories are starting to come out.
That's awesome. I know that I've heard similar stories in Group 1, but 500% is huge. That's congratulations to the city of Presidio. I'm hoping that we have some more good stories out of this for the 2019 funding year. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about filing the Form 471. As we said, that is the application for discounts. We're in the, we've gotten started on the 471 season now, and although we're doing a lot of help with you to get the 471 started, I just wanted you to be familiar with it. A lot of you, because you started late last year, maybe either don't remember the 471 or didn't have a really good introduction to it. So I wanted to show you a little bit about the Form 471. So I'm logged into the USAC training site right now as an independent library. So this would be a library, a one building library. Some of you are library systems, I know that, but it's a very similar process for those of you who have branches. So to start the Form 471, you would just click on the FCC Form 471. And we usually give a nickname to the application. I'm going to call this one 19 Independent. And I'm going to call it C1. The difference is there's Category 1 and Category 2. Internet access, which is mostly what we're working with right now, is a Category 1 service. Some people are purchasing some network equipment to help them help their libraries either get wireless connections or just to have a switch in their library. That would be a Category 2 application. Category 2 and Category 1 services have to be on separate applications. So we're gonna go over a Category 1 application. It's going to ask you if the contact information, if you're the main contact person. If I say yes, then I'm going to be listed as the contact on the form. Sometimes you may want to put an alternate contact in case you're on vacation or for some reason you're out and a reviewer tries to contact you and is unable to do that. If you put alternate information in here, then that reviewer will be able to contact them. And so you could put like a name and a phone number or an email address. And then save and continue. And so this is where you decide whether this application is a Category 1 application or a Category 2 application. We're saying it's Category 1 because it's internet access that we're looking. This is the discount information for the library. The library's discount information is determined by the school district in which the main library is located. So because this is a one-building library, it would be wherever this library is located. This is something that's associated in the profile ahead of time. I think for most of the libraries, this information's already been set. And because the profiles are locked down, if there's an issue, we would normally have to contact the Client Services Bureau helpline to fix anything. But the other information on this page is the locale code and the square footage. These data elements are important for Category 2 applications because Category 2 applications are subject to a Category 2 budget, which for libraries is based on their square footage. So there's a dollar amount per square foot that libraries are allotted to purchase Category 2 services. And depending on the locale code, for some larger libraries located in larger cities, you'll get a larger per square foot budget. So it's important to have those data elements in your profile if you're filing for Category 2. In this situation, there are no related entities because it's a one-building library. If there were branches, you would see a list of related entities. It would be a list of the branches on this page. And here's the discount information. So this library has an 80% discount. So this is where we would add the funding request information. You would click on the Add FRN button. FRN stands for Funding Request Number. So we're going to call this Internet because that's what most people are applying for. It used to be that phone services were eligible for discounts, but they're not eligible for discounts anymore. So we're going to see for a Category 1 request, it's going to be something like internet access or a WAN circuit connecting a branch to a main library. So is this a funding request, a continuation of an FRN from a previous funding year? In some cases, libraries have multi-year contracts, and in that case, if they applied for it last year and their application had a contract associated with it, they can copy the funding request from last year here. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say it's a new funding request. But if you wanted to, you could click on the Copy FRN if it was an existing service from a previous year. And it's data transmission and/or internet access. And if this was a contracted service, we would click on Contract, or if it's tariffed or month to month. For contracted services, I'm going to say that contracted services, you actually have to go into a different module and add the contract information. So there's an extra step there if it's a contract. If it's month-to-month services, you're allowed to add all of the funding information in the Form 471 as it is. So I'm going to say that it's going to be a month-to-month service in this example. We'll say that 2 bids were received. This is why we're asking everyone to collect the bids that they receive from service providers. If you filed a Form 470, you should have received responses, or you should be receiving responses from a service provider. And if you haven't received any and you've reached your allowable contract date, which is 28 days after you file the 470, then if you haven't received any by the allowable contract date, you can reach out to your existing service provider and ask them for updated pricing. We often recommend that so that in case that service provider's pricing has changed, you can benefit from that updated pricing. If you just let it ride and keep going with your your previous year's bill, you may miss out on some better pricing. So it's always just a good practice to reach out and see. There are certain circumstances in which a Form 470 doesn't need to be filed, but we recommend that you always file one. So we're going to say, yes, a Form 470 was posted. For all of you, there was a Form 470 posted either last year or this year for the services that you're seeking. You can search for the Form 470 number by that Form 470. I'm going to search in this case by the bin just because it's in the training module and they have certain information already entered in there. So I'm kind of limited to what I can put into this form. So it looks like for this particular library, there were two 470s filed, one in 2018 and one in 2019. The allowable contract date has already passed, so we can associate the Form 470. We're going to use the one that was filed in October of 2018. And if you want to put the account number in here, you may. It's not a required thing. This is where you'd put the service provider information. Service providers are identified by a service provider identification number, which is also called a SPIN. It's their Form 498 number. Again, these are service providers that are entered in here by USAC. So I am going to see if I can get it to come up. There's one. Okay. So here's the SPIN number.
Yeah.
The service start date is almost always July 1st. So we're going to say that the service start date is July 1st, 2019.
Hold on.
And for services, for month-to-month services, usually they're going to be on June 30th of the following year. So for this, we'll just say 2020. If this was a contracted service, it'll ask you when does the contract expire for the services that you're requesting. Pricing confidentiality is something that is not something that's okay. For the FCC rules prohibit confidentiality in pricing unless it was something that existed before they made that rule, which was it 2016, Mel? I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, yes, 2016, when Epic Portal was introduced is when we saw this for the first time.
Yeah, so we can say that there's not, for this is going to be a month-to-month service. So month-to-month services have to have a Form 470 every year. So we know that this 470 was filed this year because it's month-to-month services. If you're requesting fiber that has special construction, this is where we would enter that information. And I don't think any of you have that, so I'm going to say no. This is a place where you would add a narrative describing what you would have. So I'm going to say internet access at 100 megabits per second for the library and one IP address, something like that. And then that's the funding request. You see there's a funding request number right here, 199900131. For 2019, you'll see that the FRNs all start with $19.99. In 2018, it would start with an $18.99. So you can identify your funding request. If you see that they begin with a 19, you know that it's a 2019 funding request. And then you would click on Review the Form 471. And so, yes.
One more step. Let's create an FRN line item number so we can put in our pricing.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. That's true. And
So I always think of this.
That.
Yeah, I think of this Form 471 kind of like some Russian nesting dolls. So you create the 471, then inside of it you create your FRN, and inside of that you create your FRN line item. So it's easy to get confused in here.
Yeah. So,
and the fact that the Epic portal's not super intuitive makes it just a little challenging.
all right. So here we go. Back here. So you'd click on the actual funding request and then add a new FRN line item. And that way you're saying what the services are for. So this is internet access service that includes a connection from any applicant site directly to the internet service provider. So we're going to say that's what this is. It's we'll say that it's fiber, and we'll say Ethernet.
Once they don't know that information, Caroline, is that super critical to the application process?
I don't think it's that critical to the application process. I think for most of the applicants in this project, either they have a copper or DSL connection, or it's Ethernet. If it's a fiber connection, usually we're looking at an Ethernet. So I think you're probably going to be in one of those categories. So so this was fiber. So Ethernet or DSL were two of the options here. If I had said copper, then you have an option for a cable modem, which is what a lot of people have. If they don't have a DSL connection and they don't have fiber, it could be a cable modem, or it could be DSL. Sometimes it's a combination of fiber and copper, but really it's not a huge deal. This is really more for data collection than anything else. And so if you are a real fiber, true fiber, you usually have a download speed and an upload speed that are the same. I think a lot of you probably have asynchronous, which means that the download speed is a different number than the upload speed. So a lot of you may have like 100 megabits for their download speed, and then you could say sometimes you'll have like 30 megabits per second, and then no, say no, this is not burstable. And then so we're going to say yes, this is a direct connection to a single library. It doesn't include firewall services. Sometimes internet access includes firewall services that are added in there as just kind of, as we say in Louisiana, lagniappe, something extra that they don't charge you for. And we're going to say this is not a wide area network connecting multiple libraries together. It's just one connection directly to the library. And here's where we would add the monthly recurring cost. I'm going to say this one is going to be $250. There's not any ineligibles here. It's just plain old internet access. We only have one, so the monthly quantity is 1. And it already has in there that you have 12 months of service. If you have any installation charges, they would go here under the one-time unit cost. We're not going to, this library is not going to have any installation charges. But you have to put something in here. So if you have a multi-branch library system, here's where you would manage the recipients of service. Because this is only one library, it would only be one library, but in some cases there's going to be more than one entity, and you would select who is receiving the services on this funding request. It might be all of your branches, it might just be some. And so this is the recipient of service. It's just this independent library 10127. And so here we are with the line item. It has the line item cost of, it's going to be $3,000 for the year. And it's the line item with the FRN and then a 001. If you were going to be receiving something else, for instance, a wireless, sometimes libraries have a wireless system that's in your library, or maybe you have a second connection. Sometimes you have some other reason why you have to add another line item here, another product that's in here. So you could add multiple line items that are associated with that funding request. And then you can review the Form 471. And then it'll show up in your tasks. This was left over from the Form 470.
It'll generally take about 30 seconds to a minute to populate. So if you just keep hitting your tasks or hit your refresh button once you're in your tasks, it will eventually populate.
This one's taking a little while.
It's not made for TV, Caroline.
Well, I think everyone has experienced this. There it is. And then to certify the 471, of course, you want to look at the Form 471 before you certify it. Just double check that the information is correct. You said that there were 2 bids received, and it starts July 1st, it ends June 30th, 100 megs. This is the calculation of the cost. And because it's an 80% discount, then the funding commitment is $2,400. That's how much the library is going to get in their discount. And then there's that. So we're going to check the box that everything is correct. And for the librarian who's doing this, they would continue to certification. When we're doing it, we send it to you for certification. So the certifications are, I'm certifying that the library is eligible to receive the discount, and that you've secured access to all the resources that are needed to support the services. Like, for instance, you're not just having internet access that goes to your library and you don't have any computers to use the internet. That actually happened one time. That's why this rule is here. There was a school that had all kinds of internet access but didn't have any computers. So anyway, then it's got the total funding pre-discount, and then the requested amount, which is your discounted amount, and that means the library's share is $600. It computes this all for you. Now, the total budgeted amount allocated to resources not eligible for E-rate support is a figure that the library needs to put in the certification. This would be like a budget that you use to pay for your computers, your integrated library system, even if you have a technical support person that you pay to manage your computers, that would be something that would be you could enter in that blank. So you'd put a figure in there that it doesn't have to be for sure, a certain amount, but you want to be able to tie it to your budget if you're asked to. So you should probably think about it a little bit. And then once you add that amount, I'm going to say that for this library, it's $5,000. And then for this question, are you receiving any of the funds directly from a service provider listed on any of the FCC Forms 471 filed by this billed entity for this funding year? The answer is no.
The answer is always no.
The answer is always no. It's a trick question. And then, has a service provider listed on any of the Forms 471 filed by this billed entity for this funding year assisted you in locating funds needed to pay your non-discounted share? The answer to that question is always no. And then I certified that I posted a Form 470, and I waited the 28 days and collected all the bids, and I looked at all of them and I evaluated all of them. That's what you're certifying there. And that you've reviewed the competitive bidding requirements and that you're complying with them, and that these are primarily for educational purposes and you're not going to resell them. And then you certify that you're complying with the rules, and that you're acknowledging that it's a conditional discount. You're not guaranteed the discount every year. And then you're also saying that you're going to retain your documents for 10 years. We usually say just don't throw them away. You should always retain the documents that are a product of your E-rate application. Then you're certified that you actually are authorized to order the services that you're seeking discounts on. And you're also certifying that that you know that you can be debarred if you do bad things. And you're certifying that you're allocating out anything that's ineligible, and that the service provider is not going to pay for any of your costs for your non-discounted share. That's a rule that you should definitely make sure to comply with. Once you have checked all of these boxes, then you can click on the certify. And again, it's reminding you that that you can be prosecuted if you're lying. And then once you've filed, then you'll get a little screen that pops up that says that you've successfully filed the 471 and when it was certified and the time. This is an important thing because you want to make sure that this date is before 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on March 27th. And so once it's certified, if you click on that link, it'll bring you to your certified Form 471. So for purposes of this program, for the Libraries Connecting Texas project, we've created 471s for you. We're going to work with you to make sure that the correct information is put into the Form 471. What we're relying on you to do is to double check the information against your bills. If you had a multi-year contract and you're using the contract that you used last year, it's a good idea to check the information against your bill to make sure that everything is correct and that you're asking for the right amount of money, and read over it and double check it. And if you have filed a Form 470, right now, if you've reached your allowable contract date, what you should be doing is making sure that you've collected all of the responses that you received and that you evaluate all of the responses in the list. If for some reason you had put in the Form 470 that something could disqualify a vendor and you want to disqualify a vendor, that's something that we really want to make sure that if that happens, that you talk to us, because there are rules, there are E-rate rules that say that if you disqualify anyone, it has to be on the Form 470, and it has to be a specific binary thing, like it's a yes/no thing. Either they have it or they don't have it. So be very careful in situations like that. But in any case, we've sent you 2 different types of evaluation matrices. We have one that just evaluates price, and we also have one that allows you to do a multi-factor evaluation. Some people prefer to do the multi-factor evaluation because you have certain reasons why you want to consider things other than price. And so work with us, and we'll help you with that if you need a multi-factor evaluation. After the evaluation is conducted, a legally binding agreement needs to be in place. That's either through signing a contract with the vendor or a letter of award that says that you're accepting their bid, or that you're going to continue, something that memorializes that you're going to continue services that you already have. But you need some sort of a memorialization that you've made a decision on who's going to be your service provider for the next year or multiple years if you're using a multi-year contract. And after that is in place, then you can submit and certify the Form 471. But it's really important that the evaluation process and the legally binding agreement occurs before the Form 471 is filed. Does anyone have any questions about the Form 471?
Well, they're frozen. It's frozen.
You unmute. They mute. I think that's it.
She's like doing it.
Yeah, because she was doing that. Yeah.
Make it bigger.
It doesn't. I tried it.
Does anyone have any questions about the Form 471? Okay, it doesn't sound like we have any questions about the Form 471. We're just a few other little things. Mel's working with Group 2, which is the 2019 enrollment. We're wrapping that up. We're just about full of our list of people, and it's exciting because it means that people are moving forward with their Form 470s and their Form 471s. We have some. Mel, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thanks. Just one quick comment. So we do still have time for a new library to join for Group 2 and start the process, but we really are asking that they let us know this week, because our goal is to get the Forms 470 all posted no later than next Friday, so that we've got plenty of time after the 28 days to do the bid evaluation and the contract award, and still help prepare that Form 471 with you. So we want to have a little bit more time on the back end of the procurement process instead of filing the 470s and just having a day or two before the deadline. So keep them coming if you know any libraries who could benefit from the process, from the E-rate funding, the state stipend, and our help. But otherwise, time is short, so hurry.
Yes. We're here to hold your hand every step of the way for this process. But it's really important that you read the emails that we're sending you. We're sending you lots of information, some directions on how to do the evaluations, and the next steps on how to file your Form 471. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We're here to answer your questions about the competitive bidding process or anything about the E-rate process. Just to switch gears a little bit, we're about halfway through the 2018 funding year now, and by now, those of you who requested service provider billing should be seeing invoice discounts. And if you're not, it's really important to reach out to your service provider and make sure that you've communicated to them that that's what you want, because we're about halfway through the year, and what's going to happen is if they initiate the spot process now, you're going to get a huge credit on your bill for half of the year. So you probably end up with a huge credit that you'll work off of the rest of the year. For those of you who are using the BEAR process, we hope that you have filed your Form 498 and have gotten a PIN number in order to submit the BEAR. If those things sound like Greek to you and you need some information on how to set up those forms, please reach out to us. We're happy to help you get those pushed through. The Form 498 is not necessarily an intuitive form, and it requires a financial person from your library. Maybe if you are, maybe it's a city person or somebody from your board, but it requires somebody who's a financial person to be set up in your EPC account to fill out that form. So we recommend that if you haven't started that process now, or if you haven't seen your discounts, that you talk to us so we can help you get that resolved. So I think we have a few videos out there. We also we have recorded our webinars, and those are available to you. We have an archive of newsletters as well. So we have a lot of information for you. If you run into any problems, go through those webinars. Especially USAC has some great webinars. Or if you have any questions, let us know. I guess I'm going to ask you one more time if there's any more questions about E-Rate, about the process.
So Caroline, we had a couple good questions come through the chat box, and I know everybody can probably read it, but I want to put the pieces together. So one important thing to consider is the Form 470 and Form 471 that we're filing now is for services starting July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. So keep in mind the funding years run July through June. And the other question was about if they do the SPI discounted billing, do I have to pay my discounted portion up front in a lump sum or monthly? And the answer to that is generally it's just paid monthly. You would just pay the non-E-rate portion of each monthly bill as it comes. And so when you see your discounted bill, it's going to show the total charges, an E-rate credit, and that would leave your remaining non-discounted portion, and that's what you would pay each month.
Another thing I want to bring up about that is I was helping someone last week who upgraded their services during the year. They requested a higher bandwidth for 2018 than they had in the previous year, and because of that, they switched services, and they were still being billed for the old services and the new services at the same time. We saw that their bill was being credited for the discounts, but their bill was more than it should have been. So please look at your bill in detail, especially if you upgraded your services, to make sure that they did stop billing you for the older services when they started billing you for the new services.
Yeah, excellent point. And we'll continue to remind you of that as we get closer to the start of the funding year, especially for those of you who are going to be upgrading this year or changing providers.
Okay, so anybody have any more questions for us?
Okay, question was, do I have to do a Form 471 each year if you have a 3-year contract for your provider? It's a great question. So the Form 470, which established the contract, you do not have to do a 470 each year throughout the term of that contract. But the Form 471 is your application for funding, and you're always asking for 1 year's worth of funding with each 471. So the answer is yes. Each year, you'll file a 471 asking for E-rate discounts on 12 months worth of service.
And it refers back to the establishing Form 470 that you started with.
Yes. Yes.
Yep,
The
good
Form
point, Henry.
470
Thank you.
is a procurement document. So it starts off the bidding, and you evaluate the responses, and then the contract that you sign as a result of that Form 470 that Form 470 can be used as long as that contract is in force.
Great questions today and great turnout. So if you have more questions after we end the call, do not hesitate to reach out to us. Give us a call, drop us an email, and we're always happy to visit with you.
Thank you all for being here. We had a great turnout. It's great to see that. So y'all, happy E-rate.
Happy E-rate.
Happy E-rate. Bye. Thank you.